And as of today, June 2025, South Africa is still on stage 6 of the 10 alert stages of Genocide Watch. Today, I have the privilege to sit here with Mr. Edwin Leemans. So, the context is that Donald Trump accused South Africa of committing a white genocide. Now, this was most probably from the fact that Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch in 2011 said that South Africa is on stage 6 of genocide. Mr. Edwin Leemans was the man that invited Dr. Stanton of Genocide Watch over to South Africa, and he was the one that showed him the documents and the proof that led Dr. Stanton to the conclusion that South Africa is in fact in grave danger of a genocide, which puts South Africa on stage 6 of genocide. Now, the concept of the genocide in South Africa is a very nuanced concept, but it is also a concept that the ANC in South Africa uses to minimize what is happening here, accusing everyone speaking out against the persecution in South Africa of saying that there is a genocide happening in South Africa, which is not a fair portrayal of what is actually being said. Most organizations speaking out against the persecution would point to the fact that there is, in the first place, genocidal rhetoric, and also, in the second place, a very high risk of a full on systematic genocide happening in South Africa. In this interview, we will talk to the expert on what is exactly happening in South Africa and why are we on stage 6 of the Genocide Watch uh, steps of a genocide happening in the country. Good day, dear friends. This is Willem Petzer speaking. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more informative analysis like this. And you can also sign up for a paid subscription where you can support the work that we are doing. To do this, just sign me up to the number on the screen, and we will explain to you the process and also tell you about the benefits of doing so. Mr. Edwin Leemans, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Willem.
Let's start with Dr. Stanton. You invited him over to South Africa, and what did you tell him? Why did you say he should come to South Africa and investigate what's going on here, and why is South Africa in grave danger of being in a genocide?
Thank you, Willem. Yeah, it happened. We are doing the genocidal intent or genocide of certain groups onto certain other groups. We did it with the Sharpeville case. We did it with the Lutuli House case. That was at Xhosas and the Zulus and all the ethnic groups. So that was also a genocidal intent. So what happened was we started to do
Sorry
first.
to interrupt you. So when you talk about Sharpeville and these cases, that was during apartheid,
Yeah,
and you were investigating the National Party government of that time.
I would not say that. I would say is there a genocidal intent on that. Like the Lutuli House, it was different culture groups fighting against each other for political reasons.
Yes.
But now you have to determine, is it a genocidal intent or is it just something is going on and to get the people out of the way? So there's two different areas.
So the point I'm trying to make is you did not just focus on the ANC, you
No.
focused on the National Party,
Yes.
apartheid, everything,
Yes.
and you are applying the same facts or the same measurements to the current ANC government that you did apply to the apartheid government as well.
Yes. That's right.
Okay.
So we are the Statute Research Institute was formed after the first one that was the RIRS, the Roman Institute of something like that, but that was dissolved because the head investigator, Mr. Baron Pienaar, was murdered. So then we took over, and three of us then started the RSRI, the Rome Statute Research Institute, which is quite differently and so on. But then we started, but all these documents come now from 1998. So we started to investigate when was the first time the Rome Statute was ever on South African soil, and that was in 1998. So it says here in this document, South Africa signed the Rome Statute on 17 July 1998.
Before we get to the Rome
Yeah.
Statute, I just want to ask you, more broadly speaking,
Yes.
do you still today believe that South Africa is in grave danger of a genocide happening here? And when did you start thinking that with the new dispensation in South Africa, there's a great possibility of genocide happening?
That was in the 80s and the 90s. The reports we have from the Transvaal Landbou Unie or Transvaal Agricultural Union, there's a lot of groups that time that did their own investigations. Then reports came, the police cannot be trusted. So we started to investigate, why is this happening? Why are these claims made? So what happened then? Yeah, all of these things, we had to see what is the cause of this. So in 1998, yeah, that's where it started and things went wrong. And the public and the ICC was, I would say, misled on purpose or without the people knowing it. So this from Dr. Anton Katsis, they unable or unwilling to implement the Rome Statute in South African law. And that's why I started to speak to Genocide International, Dr. Anthony, and we got hold of Dr. Gregory Stanton.
Yes.
So repeatedly we send him facts and he said, Mr. Edwin, this is not genocide yet. It shows intent of genocide. But then we did further research and see in the Kampala Accord of 2009, it's not about the number of people being murdered, like in a Holocaust, like in
Rwanda.
Rwanda and Burundi with the Hutus and the Tutsis and so on. It is the way they were killed. And that's what making difference from common crime, as our minister says.
So when you convinced Dr. Stanton that South Africa is on stage 6 of genocide, it was by focusing on the specifics of the attacks happening
Absolutely.
specifically to white
Yeah.
people in South Africa.
Yeah.
What makes these attacks different than just normal crime? Why is this not just exactly the same as the gangs on the Cape Flats murdering one another, or just, let's say, the townships outside of Pretoria where there's massive crime happening within them and people murder each other every day at the sense of thousands per month? What makes this different from these crimes?
Genocidal intent and genocide is the willful doing of acts to reduce members of a certain group, cultural, religion, maybe political, but it's not included in the ICC itself. So what makes it different is the how they do it. They do not in the rural crimes and so on, maybe cut off the breast and write certain words on the walls, like with the Eugene Terblanc case. There's so many cases we investigated where we said there's military content to this, which make it a state, maybe that's still possible. It can be state terrorism.
After you had convinced Genocide Watch under the leadership of Dr. Gregory Stanton that South Africa was indeed at a high risk of genocide happening here, how many of the people involved in Genocide Watch that actually made those findings do you think were involved in spreading the message and creating the awareness in the White House that led to President Donald Trump saying that there is a white genocide in South Africa?
I would say before Dr. Stanton got his Alzheimer, he was actively involved because he went to Kenya. And that's where he started to get a mind change of what's going on in South Africa.
Yes.
And but I think when he passed away, I contacted his office a couple of times, and the guy was sort of nonchalant. But we pushed it for investigations. We don't know if they help for Trump. I would say thank you very much. But yeah, more needs to be done.
And do you think Dr. Gregory Stanton, when he was still alive and well, was actively pushing this message in America and other countries as well, that there is a high possibility of a genocide happening in South Africa?
Yeah, the thing what he said me, and he said it was genocidal, the stage 6, 7, and 8 was committed in South Africa, and he saw the last time in Kenya. So the denial stage is also happening here with the genocide intent and with the genocide. So denial said no, and they blame the truth tellers. This is one of his statements. So the truth tellers are being blamed. The farmer didn't pay his workers well. There's a lot of those things. So they blame the guys. The victims get blamed.
Of course, and the state locks up those who actually put the message out there. Yes. How many cases of attacks on white people did you investigate over your career?
In 30 years, no, 2,000 or 3,000 maybe.
3,000.
Yes, 3,000. Yeah.
Out of that 3,000, how many would you say, just a rough estimate, does have genocidal intent or military intent within them?
More than 80%.
More than 80%.
Yeah.
And do you have all these cases in your on paper?
On paper, on the internet, or then on my computers, yes. But what we take, we take like anyone, any what we see, any report, and we contact the relatives.
Yes.
And we say, this is what we see in the newspapers. What actually happened? You said, yeah, it's a brutal murder. Okay, define the word brutal. What is that? Cutting the fingers off with garden scissors, taking the genitals out of the ladies. It's an English couple. I've got the pictures here. They were lying on the bed next to the guy he was 82 years, I think. So they cut off his genitals and said, listen, speak up louder, your wife cannot hear you. And they put his genitals in his mouth.
Mm. That's
So
horrible.
We can't even describe the word horrible. The thing is with the intent to cause serious bodily or mental harm. Mental harm cannot be introduced to a corpse, period.
Do you have proof, like, let's say, names, dates, death certificates for every single one of these 3,000 attacks that you investigated?
Not death certificates. There is a big problem with death certificates here. What we investigated was the guy said he died of a heart attack while he was attacked. So it says it's natural causes.
Wow.
Yes, that we've got.
But you do have, witness statements. You have a file for every single one of
Not
these.
every file, not for every single one. We have a lot, yeah.
Okay.
We've got the contact numbers of a lot. So the Wilhelmine Potgieter, that case, the case that there was tampering from the police side on the case, the witness reports are gone, missing. The pictures that we took afterwards is also gone.
Wow.
So we went to Lindley and she said we want to reopen the case because we tried to find out if those perpetrators were still in jail. They've got 20 years for Vion Botha, 20 years in jail. They must come out in 2031.
Yes.
We try to get now the guys to say, listen, is he still in jail? They refuse to comment. So what we can think is they were released. Presidential pardoning. He was who gets released on presidential pardoning? So since
Yes, thousands of people per year in South Africa.
Yes,
it's impossible to see whom.
Yes, but go and have a look. What crimes did they commit?
Yes, because we know that, for instance, President Cyril Ramaphosa gave a blanket pardoning of more than 3,000 people a couple of years ago. So that is commonplace in South Africa without actually investigating exactly what the crimes were that were committed by these people. Before we get into the actual legal framework and references, tell me, farm attacks and specifically crime in rural areas in South Africa is a very big problem, but it does not only affect white people. How many black people are also affected by this? And what would you say to someone that tells you that, well, farm murders happen to white people, black people, farm workers, farmers, whatever? It's common. It's not just a targeted attack at white people.
Yes. On the farm murders, we had here a presentation. I would say we rented out the rugby stadium for a lot of people. That was for the Dirksen case. Now, the Dirksen case, he was shot. His brother was shot and then executed. Now, if you look here at crimes against humanity, execution-style murders must be investigated by Interpol.
Yes.
Period. Military weapons must be investigated by Interpol. We've got here in Pretoria, there is, I think, 240 Interpol members. We know of one or two cases they were brought out. One was a Fouché guy in Nylstroom who rented black people to injure, use angle grinders to, I think she died, for his wife. That was a domestic violence, making it look like a genocidal intent.
Making it look like another farm attack.
Yes, yeah.
And did you also investigate that case where I remember seeing pictures of this on the internet where the farm attackers were using military-grade signal jammers in order to jam cell phone signals?
Yeah.
What happened to that case?
No, it was thrown out. What is just gone? It was also used in the parliament. They create white noise. So the guys who, like you, who wants to record it, could not record the recordings.
Oh, I see.
So that's the same, the signal jammer, so you cannot record the audio.
That specific signal jammer we found on the internet, and it cost roughly $5,000 to buy one of those.
So that's on the Chinese market. The military grade ones with the military
Yes,
wiring is more like a $80,000.
$80,000. Was that the one that was used by these farm attackers, the military grade one?
We only saw the black and white pictures.
I
But we're
see.
sure it is, yeah.
Okay, so the question one must ask is if they attack that farm for the intent of committing a robbery, stealing stuff from inside the house, why would they be using a product that's worth $80,000 or 1.5 million rands in that attack?
So what we investigate is who gave it to him.
And could you get any answers on that?
No, no.
Is it
not at all,
impossible?
Yeah. So that's why we started to investigate state terrorism, where the inner government, like the police, like the what do you call it, the hospitals. If you go to the hospital, you get attacked, or you got raped, or got robbed, or whatever, hijacking. They minimize their figures by telling the victims, do not talk about this, because they got your address now.
Do you have any proof of this happening?
So here's a security guard at the hospital, paid by the government. And I shall show you how I hit white people because they are stupid. The mother and the son were full of blood when they had to fight, or they fight the way out of the hospital.
Now, let's get a little bit more into the actual legal framework here. So, as we mentioned earlier, the Rome Statute is the part of international law that governs crimes against humanity, such as genocide, such as war crimes.
Yes.
And South Africa, as you said earlier, signed as part of this deal that they signed the Rome Statute in 1998.
Correct.
And then in 2002, South Africa actually had a parliamentary act to sign in the Rome Statute into South African law, but it has never been implemented.
And possibly will change. And that is a problem. We are looking for a genocidal intent. Why was it changed, and who changed it, and who did not know, and who knew what? So let's have a look. 1998. So here we can see we signed the South African, the Rome Statute in July 1998. South Africa deposit its instrument of ratification of the Rome Statute, which means that should have been signed into municipal laws. Then they've rejected the BIA agreement. So if you look at the BIA agreement, so here is now from the CICC. It's a coalition for International Criminal Court. They publicly rejected the BIA agreement. So what does this mean? Bilateral immunity arrangements.
Yes.
So now we cannot, there's immunity to say, listen, this guy is immune, like diplomats. But they rejected this. So what also now happens, we cannot export or take a person into custody and take him to the ICC, like Robert Mugabe. That's why he stayed in power until his death. Like Jomo Kenyatta, like Bertrand Aristide from Haiti. He got asylum in South Africa.
Yes.
But
Why did the international community, or let's say the other countries, why did they never pressure South Africa and say to them, listen, you signed as part of the ICC, you're supposed to follow the laws of the ICC, why are you protecting war criminals in South Africa?
Right. That is where they started with the African Union.
Yes.
Then we got the reports where the previous president said, we will sort the African problems out on an African way. The ICC is only a white man's type of justification or whatever, justification.
So they rejected the
Yes.
ICC, but they are still part of the
They
ICC.
had to, I'll show you why. You get a lot of money when you sign it.
So okay, I get that part. That is obvious. So, but something that I'm getting to here is South Africa is taking Israel to the ICC
Correct.
on a case of genocide.
Yes.
But simultaneously, roughly a decade ago, South Africa also rejected the ICC.
Well, no, they want to get out of the ICC. So we tried to stop it with Gregory Stanton, with Samantha Power, with Glenys Kinnock.
So you stopped South Africa from withdrawing from.
Well, we wrote some letters. I didn't go personally there. There's no funding for that. So we wrote a lot of letters. And for Glenys Kinnock and for Samantha Power. And lately But when we found out that the embassies all over South Africa is run, the meter greeters are South Africans. So here in the CICC, you will see there is a privileges and immunities for the ICCs. They call it the APIC.
Yes.
They also did not do that. Now, this infallible says it makes it virtually impossible for the ICC to conduct its work
In South Africa.
in South Africa. If
But
you don't-
why does South Africa then still have the privilege to use the ICC to take other countries to court over genocide?
That's exactly what I do. That type of privileges.
So they still have the privileges, but they are not being held accountable because they didn't
Well,
sign.
Yes.
Let's look at the Rome Statute.
Genocide means any of the following. So any one of the following: conduct committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part. So if you kill a part of a family, it is genocide.
Okay, so how big is that part?
That is what in the Kampala Accord of 2009 it was changed in the methods again of killing the people and not
Necessarily the
increment.
percentage.
yes.
So the percentage does not matter under international law that more.
Once it won't matter, well, it's easy. Like in the Gaza case, they want to give the numbers now,
Yes.
but it's not. There was no genocidal intent. They did not proclaim it from a public views. They say kill this person, kill the Gaza, shoot the Palestine. They did not do that. Except now for yesterday on the news, I saw two ministers were banned from international travel because they
So two Israeli ministers were banned because they said that
said there was
they were inciting genocide against the Palestinians.
yeah.
But why do no South African ministers or members of parliament, because there are a lot of them that actually say kill the Boers,
Yes.
and a lot of them that incite or that has genocidal rhetoric against a specific group of people in South Africa, white people, particularly Afrikaners, they are not being banned from international travel, but when an Israeli minister said it, they were banned immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
let's
let's
look,
continue with,
let's
with
continue.
what genocide means. In
So-
part,
Of a national ethnic, racial, or religious group, such as killing members. So one member will not do a genocide. Two members of a group, that is a genocide. In the way they did it, causing serious bodily or mental harm. Serious harm. So that was with me and Dr. Stanton a big discussion. What is serious bodily harm?
mm,
You know, in America, if they slap someone on the face, or in Britain, you know, it's serious harm. This is different in South Africa.
yeah, in South Africa it's much worse.
And you can see the media when they say they hit him with a spade. No, they axed him with a spade. Hulle het hom gekap.
Yes,
Hulle het hom
they
geslaan
stopped him with a sharp part of the spade. Yes.
Exactly. Like the potgieters, like Attie Potgieter, like Marizaan Kreur, Wian Botes. Mental harm is not done to a person is dead.
Yes.
So
That is done to the survivors of
survivor.
attack, all
The
the
man
family
must-
members.
The man must keep his eyes open while they rape his wife, while they cut off his breast, while they burn him with hot water. The Bible being put up one of the victims. The Bible with the hot iron. We investigated that.
So we do hear lots of reports of these acts of torture being committed within farm attacks in South Africa, and also the fact that many of these farm attacks, for instance, children are forced to watch their mother being raped and these sort of things. How common would you say is that specific act within the 3,000 murders that you had investigated over your career?
If you take a murder, they first kill the husband. If it's a slow death, the wife has to watch. Then they rape her. Then they kill her. So the time frame, the pathology, the reports from pathology does not say how many seconds or how many minutes. We can only imagine what happened in that 10 minutes.
Yes.
But to see if they die simultaneously, that's different.
Yes.
We got reports of being dragged behind his bakkie. Yeah, that's fine, but he was still alive.
Mm.
Then he was executed. So he was shot in the head, the stomach, and in the leg.
Who was this now?
It was one of the farmers.
Okay.
It was some time ago that we've got. But then your first question was also just on the farm workers and other black farmers. Yes, it does happen. And if they call him a mpimpi,
Yes.
if he pumps what's going on, if he splits and said, listen, this guy's planning an attack, they will kill him as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or if he tries to stop it.
If he tries to stop it, absolutely. We got the Stanley case, I got it here in Magaliesburg, where his two farm workers were executed because they did not want to comply to a farm attack. So that we've got, because a person know the guy, he was a supplier for one of our companies. And so immediately thought, executed 2 farm workers. So that is different. So then he told me the story. They wanted to put a hit on him, on the farm owner. So his people was executed. No Interpol, no cross-border crimes, nothing. And that what should have been done by Interpol or the PCLU, the Priority Crimes Legislation Unit, which was dissolved some time ago.
So you're saying that the police is sweeping these horrific murders with genocidal intent and with torture, execution-style murders. It's all being swept under the rug.
Yes. First is the police force downplaying all the statistics.
Yes.
There is by Lisa something, this criminologist at UNISA. I got it. She wrote a thing, Wolf in Sheep Clothes, about the South African police force. The statistics we cannot see. Here's Afrikaans report, maybe. Police keep South Africa in the dark.
Yes.
So you cannot ask for true statistics anymore. Here's a judge, Michaela, I'm not sure about the surname. Then the judge said, this murder is not so bad. So there's a guy who did it, but we can see the detail what he did to her. He raped her, beat her, whatever. But it was not so bad, according to the judge. Paid by the government. August 2010. Government says the genocide claims is ludicrous. There's finally van der Walt procureurs is on the they gave it to Francis Ding. It's a totally ridiculous and ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
Ludicrous and ridiculous.
This was in 2010 with that documentary that AfriForum made. I think it was FIFA.
That's right.
FIFA 2010, a celebration of genocide. It was still called. Yes.
Sir.
Yes.
So that's after that. Huntley was deported back, and the Kutsia family was deported back
To South Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just continue
let's just
with what a genocide means.
Okay. Deliberate inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring about is physical destruction in whole or in part. So in a group conditions, mass rapes, putting bottle pieces in the vaginas, cutting the genitals off.
Is this common in South Africa with
A lot.
farm attacks?
Yes, you don't see it in the media. They just call it a brutal farm attack.
And you have the files, you have the proof of that.
Yeah.
Was this also part of what you gave to Dr. Stanton when he investigated the genocide in South Africa?
Yes, a lot. He gave it, then also I sent it to Censor Bugbears, Adriana Steak, she passed away. And there was a lot, especially the singing of the word kill the boer, kill the farmer. Peter Mukaba saw it. It was kill the boer, kill the farmer. Then it got more weaponized.
Yes.
It was shoot the boer. Then Zuma sang in Bloemfontein, bring my machine gun. And then he sang afterwards, bring a cannon.
This was when Jacob Zuma was president.
Yes.
He sang this.
Yes. So kill the boer, shoot the boer, bring my machine gun, bring the cannon. The cabinet will shoot. So it's an order to do what the cabinet approves. And that makes it genocidal. If Netanyahu said, bring my F-16 whatever, then you must, that's serious.
Yes.
So
it shows genocidal intent. Would you say if South Africa is actually taken to the ICC on a case of genocide, it would be easy to prove?
Absolutely.
Then why was the South African government never taken to the ICC?
BI agreement and the IC.
Because they didn't agree to the rules of the ICC.
Exactly. So they can prosecute people, but now there's a loophole in the Interpol Act and I think Article 45 of the ICC. You can have a court case here. It's a rondgaande hof in Afrikaans. You can have a court case here. They don't have to be present. So you can convict him and say, now it is. Then it will happen like with Saddam Hussein. They had a court case without him being present. Then they said, right, there's now $10 million reward on this guy to come and state his case. So, and that's weird, but they will not, because they will not be allowed. We brought him, Malema said, come and arrest me. And the world knows, then there will be an uprising. Really? I don't know.
So we just talked about what the Rome Statute says, but you say that South Africa has never implemented the Rome Statute in full in our law. despite the fact that we do sign as a party to the Rome Statute under international law. Explain that to me a bit, please.
Okay. So here's a letter. That was then in 2002.
Yes.
So in 2003, the 25th of March,
Yes.
the letter signed Thabo Mbeki. But we started to do the research. This is a very fast signature of him.
Yes.
So what we think is like the executive orders from United States. They hold it up and say, I'm going to sign this. So we've thoroughly read this. I think Mbeki never knew what was going on here. So now it says here, in particular to head the PCLU, the Prime Priorities Crime Legislation used to manage and direct the investigation and prosecution of crimes contemplated in the implementation of the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court. Act 2002, and that's the one we just read.
Yes, yes.
This
of
Act
course.
2002. So now, and serious national international crimes, which includes acts of terrorism.
But what does that mean? In simple, what does this mean?
So this means they have changed the Rome Statute for South African law. So terrorism, who's a terrorist? Russia says America's a terrorist. You know, who's a terrorist? This depends on which side it is. But
Yes.
what a terrorist does, a terrorist, how do we kill the people? And that's a problem. So they added here, and sabotage. Nothing. Who's committing sabotage? Why is he committing it? Let's take Sinn Féin from the IRA.
Sinn Féin, yeah.
Sinn Féin, yeah. So, and sabotage committed anti-national crime, which includes terrorism sabotage and the Act 24, high treason, sedition, and foreign military crimes.
Yes.
So that is changed. So foreign military crimes is a state, they call state sponsored terrorism. That is international crime you commit against another country.
Yes.
But if it's the military is being used, it's state terrorism. And it's not, well, it's not yet. They don't mention it here. So they talk about external people.
But not about themselves.
Yes. It says here state terrorism, not to be confused with state-sponsored terrorism. That's normally cross-border.
Yes.
State terrorism refers to the acts of terrorism conducted by a state against a foreign state or its own people.
So the difference is that state-sponsored would be that the state is sponsoring another organization to commit acts of terrorism.
Correct.
And state terrorism is when the state commit these acts by themselves.
Using their system, the systematic use of violence to create a general climate of fear in a population and thereby to bring about particular political objectives.
So do you say that the South African state does fit that definition?
I would say, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, yes. Look at the treatment in hospitals. Look at the treatment maybe in the
In state hospitals, not
state
private.
hospitals, private hospitals. I can confirm that.
So what you say is this executive order changed South Africa's compliance to the Rome Statute in the sense that it can be applied to external parties, but not to themselves.
Yeah. And what he says here, terrorism, acts of terrorism and sabotage. This was brought in the same letter was shown to Dr. Les Pretorius of the so-called Boeremag. They didn't call themselves Boeremag. It was the media.
Yes.
So, but
So they were in jail for what, 25 years basically.
yeah. So I think they out now. I'm not sure, but then they said no, it's sabotage because they blew up a train station, whatever, and one of the components fell into a informal house and killed the people. That's why they were up for murder.
Yes.
But it was not intentional, and it was sabotage, but it's not a ICC crime. It's not a Rome statute. It's not a statutory crime.
So this was trained specifically for their case. So we did talk about the crimes being committed that will form part of a genocide, but when you accuse a nation or a group of committing genocide, there must also be genocidal intent.
Yeah.
That's the second part of this. Would you say that there is genocidal intent from the government of South Africa?
Yeah. Let's take the hospitals. People, women that get raped, they are left women, black and white and colored and Indian. They are being left there. They first talk to, please don't talk about it, because the police force want to downplay all the statistics.
How much would you say are the statistics downplayed in your research? according to your
I
research?
would say 60 to 80%, because the time framing is now important. You cannot lay a claim of hijacking after 8 p.m. at night. So come back tomorrow. So that the day is not anymore 24 hours.
Yes. Okay, so
Yeah.
will you show us a bit of what you compiled as genocidal intent from the South African government?
Yeah. So
So
let's
you
have a
come
look.
around, yeah.
So after the non-implementation and all that terrorism and sabotage, so here is quite a thing that says, reject white man's justice.
And this was in one of the newspapers that are aimed at black South Africans, the Sowetan.
Yeah.
For international viewers, Soweto is a black South African township. So the Sowetan is the local newspaper within the township.
Yeah.
And they quoted Jacob Zuma when he said, "Reject white man's justice." What did he mean by that?
Well, that is now, if we try to talk to him afterwards, but for a guy who does not buy a newspaper, period, that's an order.
Yes.
Reject white man's justice. Now, this was done, and the Sowetan, we went online, www.sowetanlive.co.za. This article was not on the in the internet media, so only aimed at specific people,
Only in the print media.
print media who can afford a 4 rand, or who can just read the headings. The next article was not yet Uhuru. So you can go and Google what is Uhuru, and then it's not yet Uhuru. They posted stickers on the taxis. Do not, because they took this seriously.
So let me just clarify this. This was the previous president, Jacob Zuma. These were all quotes from the previous president, Jacob Zuma. And this was in November 2012.
Yes.
When did Jacob Zuma say, "Not yet Uhuru," and what does that mean?
I would say it's in one of my newspaper reports. I cannot remember the date, but it was not yet Uhuru. And they printed even at taxis because there was an uprising going very strongly against the white farmers. The brutality of the murders just escalated.
Yes.
So that's when he said, not yet Uhuru. And that was just, and this, remember, this was after 2010, the soccer, World Soccer 2010. He gave an order, behave yourselves for just 4 weeks. That's an order.
Did he say that?
Yes.
For the
Soccer 2010.
2010.
There was only 2 incidents. One was a Dutch woman whose necklace was stolen. And lo and behold, 3 days later, they returned the necklace. They found it in Soweto.
Oh.
In Atteridgeville. Yeah, I don't know where, but anyway, they found
So crime
can be controlled.
So you're saying crime can be controlled, and crime did virtually vanish during the 4 weeks of the FIFA World Cup.
So much that Brandon Huntley, he's a guy who got asylum in Canada. Brandon Huntley. So they deported him on costs. South Africa refused to take him in again. There's a Kutsia family. The father, the mother, and 2 children. They were also, that got asylum in Canada also. They were also deported on costs. I couldn't.
How did they get asylum in Canada so long ago?
Yeah, there was the problem. 2006. Oh, well, the murders against the whites.
So they successfully proved to the Canadian government in what was that year?
That was about what was before 2004.
In 2004, that they need asylum because of the persecution and violence against white people. I know that there are some people, one of them being Jason Bartlett, who's also quite a infamous or famous voice on the internet, who also claimed asylum in the United States of America and was successful in his application long before Trump opened the borders up for refugees from South Africa.
Yeah.
So a lot of people on an individual basis were able to at least convince other governments like the United States of America and the Canadian government that they were being persecuted for their skin color in South Africa.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, Jason Bartlett's case was during the Biden administration. He was able to convince the American government of this, and they gave him refugee status in America, and he's still there. Now, do you have any of these cases where people successfully claimed refugee status in other countries, and what did they argue in order to successfully get refugee status?
We've got a few cases, but let's look first at the bigger problem. When you apply for citizenship or you want to immigrate to another country, there's only 4 reasons: better prosperity, better whatever.
Economic, yes.
Economics, but there's nothing about you being fearing for your life.
Yes.
You cannot do that in normal application. So that's why we went to New Zealand, Australian, British embassies and give us the people's names, and you go and contact them in that country and asking, please come forward. Why did you actually leave it?
And
son
did
was
they?
no. They
Did they?
refused to go, no.
So how many of the immigrants that you talked to that immigrated, they got a job overseas in New Zealand, Australia, America, wherever, and you talk to them and they say to you that the reason why they immigrated was because they did fear for their lives?
More than 80%. One of the strongest cases now, and that's where the ICC said is the OPC number 169. I gave it actually to different companies and also to the US embassy. It's a Senegal 1 and Senegal 2, where it's said from the platforms, go now and burn the farms. And there's a clear incitement of genocide, and then also himself with his cadres doing the genocidal acts, burning the farms. We investigated scenes where the military boots were found, tracks. And the one guy who was also ex-military, and he know that was our latest army issue. So you don't buy it at the superstore. Those are issued.
So now that we looked at all of the facts that you uncovered through your studies and the years that you worked on letting organizations such as Genocide Watch and the ICC know of what was going on in South Africa and trying to get them to at least investigate a genocide in South Africa, which we know happened with Genocide Watch, and that Gregory Stanton actually did conclude his investigation in South Africa. What do you think will happen in the future? Are you going to continue push for such organizations and countries to investigate the South African state for the possibility of committing a genocide?
Well, my age is counting against me, but I will certainly encourage people to do that. And to come back to Gary Stanton, I got a letter where he's going to send a special envoy to South Africa, led by Samantha Power. Oh, she was that time in the White House, but she is still on the. She would like to come to South Africa.
Yes.
And then I said he must first visit all the other people before going to the government, or vice versa. Get their case and see what's going on, but don't take them to show the Stanton or the envoy what's happening on the farms, because it's two different pictures. So yeah, people must continue it, send information, go and join the CICC, start NGOs, because like a plenary sessions at the ICC, at the Interpol actions and whatever, they only have certain NGOs, and that's all family members of these people. So if it's not an independent NGO doing this watchdogging, it will go by, no one will do something about it.
Thanks for watching this discussion. I hope you found this informative. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more analysis like this, and you can also join us on a paid subscription, which would greatly help us doing the work that we are doing. And to do so, just message sign me up to the number on the screen. We can take you through the process and also inform you about the benefits that you can receive from this. Goodbye and God bless.